Like everything else, it's one thing to talk about theory, but for me, at least personally, things always tend to stick a little bit more when I've either done it myself or I have a good story that helps me bring a concept to life. So, this episode's a little peek behind the curtain at my shopping habits to help you guys better understand how your potential customers and clients are using AI to either find you or find your competition. So, background like the social media algorithm tends to do, thanks to what my mom had been engaging with, all of a sudden she got served this reel for this new Korean beauty superstore about a half hour north of us. So she then sent it to me, and we both were immediately like, yep, we got to go there this weekend. And I do love beauty and skincare, but I don't pay that much attention to it because, fun fact, my sister actually works in beauty and she started in product development for skincare. So I'm like, hey, Rach, what do I need? And I give her my concerns and she gives me some products, and that's how I make my selections. And so then through all the conversations that she and I have had over the years, I have a baseline understanding of some ingredients. I've experimented with some Korean skincare, so I know which brands I tend to gravitate towards, but I still kind of went up to this superstore without a plan. And I walked in and was quickly humbled. So, first of all, I will say this place was so fun. It was massive, literally floor to ceiling with products. Imagine like your favorite suburban grocery store, but now solely filled with beauty products. But since it was a K skincare shop, all of the packaging was in Korean, which means that my excitement quickly turned into confusion and overwhelm as soon as I realized I don't even know what I need. And like, I don't know how to read any of this stuff. And so I could have called my sister, but she was out and busy. And to be honest, like I was just so overwhelmed, I didn't even know what I needed to ask at that point. But that's when it hit me. So I will say that as of today, I'm very much a Claude girl, but historically, I was a ChatGPT girly. And last year when I was planning a trip to Istanbul, I knew I wanted to get some beauty treatments done. So I did what a lot of your clients are doing, and I started a conversation in ChatGPT. And so this thread started with some photos of my face, my goals and concerns, both in terms of like what's going on and in my face, and also like safety concerns and considerations of international beauty treatments. And so it outlined all of the med spas that fit my criteria, as well as help me map where they were in relation to my Airbnb and how to get there. And I know that I'm on a tangent as per usual, but hear me out because I promise I'm going to land this plane. But so we went back and forth, vetting, validating all the clinics until I found the right one for me. And then from there, I had it curate my at-home regimen to help me support what we did. So like make the results last as long as possible. Plus it was tailored to my non-negotiables. So things like ingredients, quality, price range, all of that stuff, tailored to what Katie Gutenberg needs. And so because it gave me a list of what I should be using, how I should be using it, options for each step, and the purchase links to each product, that actually did become my skincare routine. So now, fast forward landing the plane back to this Korean superstore. I'm now in Florida in the sun and in the pool way more teaching aqua aerobics. I don't think I've even mentioned that on here, but fun fact about me, I'm in the pool many days a week in the sun constantly. And so while my main goals are the same, there are additional things to consider like higher SPF, more application of it, extra hydration. Plus, I had gotten pretty low and run out of a few of the things from the first time that ChatGPT curated the skincare routine for me. So then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I have kind of have a clearer idea, but again, zillions of options, all in Korean. So what did I do? I went back to that old thread. I gave it a quick update of my new skin and hair considerations to pay attention to, which products I had run out of, which things I had noticed differences from and not really. And then I also specifically said, I'm in this Korean skincare store. I'm looking for clean beauty brands. Again, knew my price range, all of that stuff. And I asked it to give me an updated list. And I will say that the results were beautiful. They explained every single recommendation and its benefit. They provided images for each product it was recommending since I can't read the packaging, and the names that they were giving me were in English versus the Korean names. And from there, the hardest part was just finding everything in the store. So it was so relieving because I had just been so overwhelmed a few minutes earlier to very quickly feeling in control and on the hunt. And because it had already alleviated so much of that frustration and confusion and overwhelm, and I finally felt clear of like what I need to get and why, it was really simple for me. I just threw it in my cart and I knew I was buying it, which actually does align with emerging research about the direct correlation between referral traffic from AI platforms and the person's propensity to buy. And so that's actually what leads me to the heart of this podcast. Because while I can talk about skincare and shopping all day long, unfortunately, this isn't a story about that, but it is one about marketing and business and making sure that you're showing up where people could be looking for you. Because we all know this now. People now have the option to go deeper than your standard Google searches of facial near me or business coach in insert the city. They're now coming to their favorite AI tools with real layered specific problems. So things like, I run a med spa and my team is overwhelmed by follow-up. Which services or tools can handle this for them? Or my website is getting a decent amount of traffic from my Instagram, but no one's buying my low ticket offer or scheduling a call, like whatever the case may be. Who can help me fix that? And so just like SEO, depending on how you set up your business online and like all of your touch points, AI is either seeing you and recommending you in these searches or it's not. And that's why GEO, so SEO for AI tools, isn't really a nice to have option anymore. It's kind of a non-negotiable. So let's start from the beginning. If you've been here, if you're listening, you probably know, but it always helps to kind of reground us for newer people. But I like to think of it kind of as SEO or search engine optimization 2.0. So historically, we had to build websites for Google's crawlers. So we'd optimize site pages, the content that you could read, like literally what's on the page, the metadata and alt tags, which is more behind the scenes, the site structure, which means like how it's organized, all of that stuff, and other things like that. And it was all hyper focused so that when someone typed a keyword or a key phrase into Google, you would appear. And following the evolution is actually really interesting. I just now even like wanted to go on a whole tangent about it, but I'm gonna keep it tight and we're not gonna do that. But leapfrogging to GEO, because there have been a lot of milestone changes for SEO, but now leapfrogging to GEO, it is based on a lot of the same core principles and tools, but it takes it a step further to A, feed into more platforms. So your ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, and any other open source options. And also B, to make sure that your site is built so that the crawlers can reach and read every single part of your site, so that as people are asking these nuanced, layered questions, they have a clear enough understanding to put it all together and serve you as a search result. And so this is where the tactics to do a strong GEO program go a little bit further than SEO. But even more significantly, the way that people are using these tools and platforms in their research for their shopping is significantly impacting their buying decisions. Because think about even pre-AI, because now even Google at the top, you have their AI generated search results. But like before all of that happened, when you'd search for something, you'd get a list of websites and links to click. So you'd read the titles, a little description, who it's from, pick who you want to click on, or whoever showed up first for the majority of people. And then you'd go to the website where you'd be spending more time learning about who they are, what they have to offer, deciding if this is the right solution, partner, product, whatever for you. Now, with the ability for AI to aggregate massive amounts of information and then spit out a synthesized, well thought out answer, AI's put an even bigger stamp of approval on who's credible, relevant, trustworthy, all of that stuff behind their suggestions. And the nicer part for people using it is because, yeah, obviously doing a regular Google search, you can just keep scrolling search page after search page and technically get to wherever you want to go. Whereas AI and GEO through AI is now curating and pulling only a handful of your best, most personalized options. So it's an overall easier, feeling more trustworthy process for the person searching for something. And also side note, because this is a piece of feedback or a question that I've gotten from clients when we're talking about at GEO and all of that stuff, a lot of people will be like, well, I've heard now when focusing on GEO, website clicks have gone down as opposed to when we were doing SEO. And that is valid. That does happen. The reason I will say that is thinking about this example that I just used and walking through that behavior is we had to do a lot of that research ourselves. So we were going through clicking. A click didn't mean that someone was buying, but they were clicking through. They were technically like top of funnel at that point, learning about you, potentially being brought down funnel towards conversion, potentially not, potentially leaving, never hearing from you again. Whereas now a lot of that information that we were going to on our own to go look at the website, figure it out, do all of that stuff, it's now being pulled into the curated search results so we don't have to click through. So, yes, technically, you might not see as many clicks, but again, that's why I say the ones who do click through tend to be more vetted, more qualified because they're a few steps ahead in the research as opposed to someone who historically would have just come from a Google search results page. Not knocking either, just saying different behaviors. But all of that to say, what I really hope you're taking away from this, and I think you guys are, is if your website is not set up to be quickly and easily scanned, it's not organized and delivering what you have to offer on a silver platter to these tools, you're not even going to be in the conversation. You're not even going to be in those buying options. And so now, depending on which of my clients I'm speaking about, they kind of run the gamut in terms of their knowledge about and interest in optimizing their sites and their whole digital presence for GEO. But I think it's fair to say that at this point, most people know the value, but some still aren't as keen to adopt it because I have noticed that a lot of my clients will project their own behaviors onto the rest of the world, for better or for worse. So I do just want to call it out because I think I've been like sprinkling in some like research and rationale and things that we're seeing anecdotally, but true data-driven research is starting to show that AI searches are accounting for 34% of all of the domestic, and I'm talking about the US, searches right now, as opposed to any other search engine. It's a big pool of people that you could and should be tapping into. So whether it's my K beauty story that I was telling you guys at the top of this episode, or how in previous episodes I've shared how I found my therapist, or for a lot of you, I'm sure you guys are doing this yourself. You know what it looks like to get search results from AI. We all know that this is becoming more and more regular and will likely someday soon become the norm. Now, here's another big thing that I want to talk about when it comes to GEO and like what you should be thinking about and all that stuff. But these crawlers aren't just looking at your website. They're crawling your whole digital presence, like I kind of just mentioned. So your social media, your podcast, your press mentions, forums that you might have been mentioned in, PR, media, all of that stuff. So that means that whether you're formally or not formally doing a GEO program, AEO, or AI, just like Google has been determining who you are, who you're talking to, and if you're worth being recommended to those people or not. So the question then becomes, do you want to let this just happen to you, or do you want to intentionally work with these crawlers? So I would assume you guys are in the latter camp. So let's get into what specifically shapes your GEO and at least start to make sure that you're in a decent place. So as per usual, quick little audit and assessment and activity for you to do. So I want you to take stock of how clearly do you describe what you do? Because AI tools are essentially super sophisticated pattern recognizers, matchers, connectors, all of that stuff. They are looking for specific, clear language about who you are, who you serve, what problem you solve, how you solve it, all of that fun stuff that we always talk about when it comes to your marketing strategy and your messaging strategy and reaching your dream clients. So that's where and why, just like every other touch point in your marketing toolbox, we have to be really intentional and really specific and clear. So there's no value if your website says something super vague like, I help businesses grow or helping your business grow, because it's not really enough context for any of these tools, AI, Google, any of that stuff, to recommend you to a specific scenario that your dream client is trying to navigate and find the right person to help with. But if your website says something clearly and repeatedly about how you work with service-based businesses who have full teams and full calendars and who are overwhelmed by manual follow-up and scattered systems, now AI has something to work with because you're describing a situation that someone might be describing to their favorite AI tool. The more specific and consistent you can get, the better your GEO. And additionally, in terms of that pattern recognition and matching, one of the best things that you can and need to be doing for yourself is ensuring naming consistency across all of your channels. So like your website, social handles, podcast names, etc., which I'm a culprit of like do as I say, not as I do. That's going to be another theme of this podcast episode. You'll hear it coming soon. But if you were like me, then where things aren't fully matching, you want to make sure that you have strong interlinking amongst all of them so that the crawlers can easily put together this big holistic photo of like, oh, they're all these things, they do all of that, and start to piece together, oh, well, this thing over here said this and this thing over there said that. And like, that's how it all comes together. The second thing you want to be paying attention to is your site structure. And I know that I've been talking about this ad nauseum, but AI tools crawl your website with the intent to understand it. So, clear navigation, logical page hierarchy, headings that actually describe what's on the page and break it down. I compare it to like chapters in a chapter book. They're all now things that you can and should be, and honestly should have been this whole time because of SEO, but should be checking to make sure that they make sense. Because if your site's confusing for humans to navigate and understand, it's going to be just as confusing for AI crawlers to make sense of. And just like I talk about with everything else when it comes to your marketing, a confused mind always says no. So whether it's your real life human visitors or the crawlers, confusion is taking you away and in the exact opposite direction of where you're trying to go. It's saying, hey, don't look over here. This doesn't make sense. Go look over there. So now the third thing we're going to talk about is your schema markup. And this is a little bit more technical, but it's worth mentioning because it's essentially a layer of code on your website that explicitly tells search engines and AI tools what kind of business you are, what your services are, where you're located, what your reviews say, all that jazz. And if you don't have it, you're leaving more crucial context on the table. Going back to where I promised that this is a do as I say, not as I do episode, I will link it in the show notes, but I recorded a how-to video on how to use your favorite AI tools to perform a GEO audit and then a site plan from there. And just like I knew it would, I got read to filth because I barely have the time to focus on my own marketing because I'm always prioritizing my clients. So if you watch it, you will understand right away why this is the pot calling the kettle black because I don't have any. Mere mortal, just like everyone else. But so now, fourth tip, your content. Just like traditional SEO, AI tools pull heavily from your published content because it's one of the easiest ways to showcase your expertise, your perspective, understand what you do. So that's things like your podcast, your blog, if you have one, all the words on your website, your social content and videos and stuff, if that's getting pulled in and indexed correctly. So the more you publish thoughtful, specific content about your area of expertise, the more context AI tools have to associate you with that space. And again, complete that holistic, layered, nuanced picture. So while I could do a better job at closing the loop between my podcast and my website and therefore our SEO GEO, it's one of the reasons that I do try to be as regular with the episodes and so detailed in the show notes because it's reading everything and it's serving it to people who are searching for the content that I have on here. Every single episode is a data point that reinforces to crawlers who I am, what I know, who I help, how I think, all of that stuff. And so it's critical to be handling all of that appropriately and supporting crawlers. And finally, fifth thing you should be looking at, reviews and third-party mentions. So they're looking for social proof. So things like Google reviews, mentions in publications, guest podcast appearances, all of those fun things. It all contributes to how credible you appear to the model, both in terms of like you're getting talked about a lot and also if these are big credible sources. Like let's say I was talked about on Forbes and Entrepreneur and all of that stuff that's getting millions of organic traffic sessions each month. These tools are then like, oh, this is a trusted voice and source that you can turn to recommend these voices. So if I'm getting mentions and people are driving back to my website from there, it reinforces my own standing and expertise and all of that stuff. If that's not the case for you, it's literally, like I said, your Google reviews. For me, I have like podcast guest things where like if you search my name and my company, that will come up as well. All right. So now you have those 5 quick tips that you can start to implement, but like what happens next? So obviously, if you want a formal GEO program that's based on best in class practices, that's constantly measuring your performance and optimizing from that, we can do that for you. But not everyone's ready for that just yet, which is actually where the idea of that how-to video that I mentioned earlier came from. Because I was talking to one of my old clients a few weeks ago, and she was telling me about how she knew she should be working on her GEO, but that it was just too overwhelming. And she was just kind of confused because there wasn't one great place where she could go with step-by-step instructions, since it's also personalized to where you currently stand. So, like I said, I created a how-to video where I walk you through how I would handle using whichever your favorite AI platform is to run the audit and get those personalized findings. So to keep this episode short and sweet, I'll link to it in the show notes. But basically, it walks you through how to get your personalized audit of your current GEO standings. And more importantly, how to first train your AI tools so that they're clear on exactly who you are, your goals, all of that stuff, so that it can give you even more specific, more beneficial findings. It helps you make sense of those findings and prioritize them by what's most impactful and like a need to have versus a nice to have. It shows you how to get step by step instructions on how to update and maintain your GEO. And then it breaks down even further. And this is where I get really excited about it. It breaks it down into what do you need to do or have a human do versus where can AI either support you or full on do it for you. And so again, I encourage you to watch it, but I will remind you that this is a case of do as I say, not as I do. But after recording that video and getting pretty humbled by it, I will say that refining our GEO jumped pretty high up on our priority list. But now to bring this all home, put a nice, neat bow around this episode, this is your friendly reminder that while they are grounded in a lot of the same principles, GEO is not a replacement for SEO and vice versa. You still need to be intentional about both. And while there is overlap, think about it like a Venn diagram. There are things that you do intentionally the same and parts that you break out a little intentionally differently. But since GEO is the direction we're all heading in, the businesses that are focusing on it now are significantly setting themselves apart from the competition. So these tips plus a how-to video should be a really strong starting point. But if you need more hands or you prefer not to be bothered, you know what to do. Either way you tackle it, you've got this, and I'll talk to you guys later.